Hi, everybody. Welcome to A Case of the Jills. Again, we have Auntie Sarah. I think she's going to be on this side when we record. Oh. Auntie Jill. Hey, everybody. We are here to talk to you today about something kind of important that comes up a lot on this channel, which is using your sport to manage mental health. We want to just come out with this. This is something that we do. If you're an athlete for more than 5 minutes, you understand that sometimes the reason why you lace up your shoes and get out the door has less to do with keeping your heart healthy and more about keeping your mind healthy. I would also suggest, if you're interested to understand the benefits, the psychology behind the the mental health benefits of exercise, I would refer you to go back to one of the videos on this channel with Emily Bernstein that talks about the actual studies that she did on what types of mental health benefits are incurred by physical activity and about how much physical activity it takes to do that. So that's a great place to look at some of the resources there. But the reality is we tend to overdo things a little bit, especially in this community. So we want to talk to you today and have a very open conversation, shocking, about some of the ways in which we have experienced this in our own lives and some sort of places where you might want to take a second look at your own training in order to not end up in the same place we did. As a quick review, both Sarah and I suffered from overtraining. Both of us had hormonal disruption due to that and a host of other issues from training too much and abusing our bodies. So we want to help you understand what not to do. But we also want to be very frank with you and explain to you how we experience this in our lives, right? So I just was going to start off the conversation, and I just want you all to know that I already told Auntie Sarah that she doesn't have to be as frank with y'all as I will be. But you don't need to know all the ins and outs of my running history, but I will just tell you a quick story, which is that I went through a divorce when I was kind of young. And before the age of 30, let's put it that way. I was about, I got married when I was 25 and I was ready for divorce at about 25 and a half. Yikes. Well, let's a 25-year-old get married. I keep saying this. I don't understand.
Oh, I agree. I was 25 and I'm like 30 should be like the minimum age, but yeah.
A whole other story. But it was clear from the beginning that this was not the right thing to do. And I will definitely say that my ego wants me to tell you that it was a 50-50 thing, but the reality is that it really wasn't. It was mostly me. And so as painful as it is to describe now, I can tell you, I in no way had the ability to sort of say at the time that it was my fault. And so because I didn't have sort of I can understand now that I didn't have the wherewithal to sort of understand what was going on. I understood, though, that there was this really interesting thing called triathlon in the world. And I admit that I used a focus on this kind of new sport that I was learning about and getting excited about as a place for me to work out what was happening at the end of my marriage. And it was a place for me to put my energy and effort and planning and thought, and it was a place for me to really delve into when it was clear that I wasn't capable to delve into what was really happening inside myself and with my marriage and with my ex-husband. So I used to joke and say that at the beginning of my career training for triathlon, that every turn of the pedals was written with my husband's name on it. Ooh. Yeah, and it was. I can remember, and we're just getting right into it. I can remember crying on my bike. Do you know that you can cry in the pool?
Do now.
You can cry underwater.
Oh God.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
Yeah,
I didn't know that, but you could. Well, you know, it was a place for me to put myself and my thoughts. Yeah. And so I can see that now, and I can see where, I don't know if you have this experience, but a 5K wasn't going to cut it. right? It's like I needed something bigger. And so why not, if you can do one sport, let's do 3. Yeah. And then that becomes where all of your time went. And my overtraining issues did not come from triathlon training. It came from ultramarathon training, but I certainly got the message at the beginning of my time that the more time I spent focusing on the sports that were necessary to do triathlon and learning, by the way, because like the learning curve, it was like I was obsessive. I was researching bikes and saving all my money and going to all these training camps and blah, 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 all over the place. By the way, at the time I lived in Puerto Rico. More fun facts from Auntie Jill. And so we had this gorgeous 50-meter outdoor pool where I lived. So it wasn't hard to spend more time there than thinking about my life. You know, we would go on bike rides out from San Juan to Fajardo, if anyone knows the island, you know, or to just everywhere, just all over the island. And, you know, it was easier for me to spend a Saturday doing that than to contemplate my own, the end of my marriage. So, and I have more things to say about that, but let Auntie Sarah here tell us a little bit about where maybe she originally saw this in her life.
Oh, yeah. You know, interesting.
Oh my God.
Where do we begin?
Yeah, it's hard. I know. Yeah.
Interestingly enough, so yes, definitely. I've definitely kind of, if anybody's listened to our last conversation that we had together, it was a way to deal with unhappiness with who I was. I wasn't married at the time. I wasn't in any fulfilling relationships. I was having some issues there, but I wouldn't say that was the reason. It was more of trying to prove that I could be better through my performance or that I had value. And then that becomes a kind of perpetual little spiral of like, it's never enough. It's never enough. And then anything that goes wrong, you learn. I know I'm going to get like for this, but I hate this. I hate the saying mental training is my therapy or running is my therapy. I know that's like nitpicky because I understand what most people are saying with that. It's a way to get out and just like free your mind. But the problem is I think more people use it as a crutch. And more people use it like you talked about. You would go swim and cry in the pool instead of facing the issues with your marriage. And now whether that would have meant, it doesn't sound like it was a fulfilling relationship and it doesn't sound like it was healthy to where facing it would have changed anything, but maybe you would have gotten out of it sooner, you know, versus hanging on, you know. It doesn't mean necessarily, I'm not saying don't go do the activity so that you can fix the things that are broken, but sometimes it's facing what's going on means you can exit those situations sooner than just trying to use activity to be your crutch, I guess, and not face issues. Yeah. And I see a lot of people use it as like a diversion technique. I don't want to face this problem, so I'm going to go out and run or swim or bike or whatever it is. And again, I get it. I used to say running is my therapy. Like, it's my me time, you know, but I feel like then you're just turning something that should be healthy and putting it in a way that it's actually not in a healthy position in your life, and relying on something like that when you probably should be working through some things in a different way it's probably not a healthy way to cope. So, and I'm sure we'll talk about this later, but for me, when my brother died and I wasn't able to run, was the first time in my life that I actually couldn't do the thing that helped me process the things. So I had to do the work.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I really want to ask you some questions about that, but I do want to just address what you said about running as my therapy. And I see this all the time. It's a constant headline. It's like, it was like last week, I think Drtyrunner magazine did something about using running for therapy. And as much as I do understand what people are saying, just like you,
yeah.
What we don't want to do is get into the place where we think that is a substitute for therapy, or that it is the only tool in your mental health toolkit, right? Because absolutely. When that happens, what happens?
Yeah. It's bad. And then, you know, kind of piggybacking off of that, I just find when it's usually there's usually a greater problem or issue going on. It's not, just, I get it flippantly, like running is my therapy. I call running my moving meditation, which I'm sure some people could have issue with that, right? It's like, is it semantics? I don't know. But not facing whatever is causing you or driving you to go outside and pound the pavement. And like you said, a 5K is never enough. So suddenly it's 5 miles didn't help my mental state. So 10 miles must. 10 miles, then maybe 20. It's like, it never's enough because you're never addressing the root of things. You're trying to put a Band-Aid on it. You're trying to cover it under the guise, like I did with my diet, of it's healthy. I'm being active, it's healthy, so this is good for me. That's not to say there aren't cases when sometimes it's like you're having a rotten day and you're like, yeah, I need to just go out and get some fresh air and, process things, but it's the habitual habit of this unhealthy pattern of using movement or activity instead of dealing with pain or issues in your life.
Right. So we said a whole bunch of stuff in there. I want to pull out a couple of pieces of that. So one, going back to you when you could not use running to manage your mental health at that time, what was sort of the fallout? What was the initial sort of like, I can't use this anymore, like sort of brick wall realization? And then how did you set about working through those emotions without relying on training to do that?
Yeah. So I wasn't able to run for about 3 years prior to my brother dying. And in that time I got married, I moved overseas, I graduated college, got married, moved overseas. So there were a lot of stresses in my life. And so I probably wasn't dealing with them fantastically. And in truth, we also had moved overseas and I was going through probably depression, melancholy, what most people would call it. And what was that?
Homesick.
Yeah. Oh gosh. All the things, right? Newly married, which comes with its own set of challenges. Newly married at 25, mind you, remember, wait till you're 30. But I took to eating a lot. I gained like 45 pounds because food became my comfort. Food. I just can't run. Food. And I didn't process things. I was very unhappy. And not saying being able to run would have helped that, but I still was like, well, I've got to find something else because I had that brain of, I can't run. So, and then after my brother died and that the proverbial hit the fan then, that's pretty low. I actually had to start talking to people about it.
Funny that.
Yeah, I saw counselors, I saw chaplains, I talked to people. I became very open when I was struggling, and I had no ability to use hardcore exercise as a way to deal with my pain because I pretty much could walk back then and do some cycling, but I didn't cycle a lot on my own back then during that time. So it's not like I could go out for a 30-minute walk and feel that endorphin high. If that makes sense. Like let's face it, that's what we're choosing. That's what we're chasing, right?
Yeah.
And so I had to be more present with myself and also more transparent with other people about needing help and when I was struggling.
So here's a question, honest answer. Would you have preferred, how much harder was it to go through therapy and kind of understand like the weight gain, the therapy, all of the other coping tactics than it would have been to go out for a run? Easier, like frictionless. Which one?
Oh,
harder?
Running would have been easier.
Yes.
Oh, running would 100% would have been easier. And at the time, that's all I talk about. Like the only thing that gets me through is the one thing I can't do. Like I was very open about the fact that running was the way I coped with things. And now I can't run and I have to deal with this loss and I can't even go run it out or run it off. So, hell yeah. If I'd been still able to run, I would have been running.
Do you think that you would have processed the pain of the death as well? And nobody processes death well, I understand, but relatively speaking, do you think you would have been better off in the end just being able to sort of run it out versus?
No. I that's me personally. Like I know, having the conversations we've had before, knowing my addictive personality, knowing what running had become to me, the restrictions I was putting on myself with my diet, never, like, having no ceiling of what I was willing to do to control things in my life, that it would have gone, actually, it was almost a saving grace that I couldn't run, because I can only imagine how far I would have taken it. Because I just would have, like an alcoholic with a bottle, running would have been my medicine. And I just would have tried to numb the pain that way instead of dealing with it.
So it's interesting that you say that, because I did not have an injury at that time and did not bump up against overtraining in those years, and was able to pretty much use myself and my body in an unlimited way to process the things that I was going through. And so just for context, and this is real, I went through divorce when I was 28 to 29. And I didn't really understand how to manage myself until, this is so embarrassing, but probably 10 years later.
Yeah.
Why? Because in that 10 years of time, I was still putting all of my effort into triathlon, which turned into ultramarathon. And
a sport that glorifies going further, by the way. I mean, yes. So there was no limit. There was no limit. Now the brakes are off.
Yes. Yeah. Because I did what everybody does when they come into this sport, or, you know, this is a gross generalization, everyone. So I'm saying this knowing that not everyone comes into the sport this way, but I came into the sport like a lot of people do, which is they're like enamored of this, you know, the myth of Dean Karnazes running through the night with the box of pizza in his hand. Remember this? I know you read that book. We all read that book.
Oh, yeah.
Hello. We were like, oh my God. And I was like reading about Scott Jurek, and I was like,
oh yeah,
watching, like, there was like, you know, photos of him. Remember when he had the long hair?
Oh yes.
It was very Tarzan.
Very primal.
Very compelling. He used to scream like during his
yes. Yes. Yeah. Oh yeah.
This was a thing. He was like my Fabio. He was like my, you know, ultra running Fabio. Oh, yeah. You know, that kind of the hair, the look, the scream, the shirtlessness. I don't know. The point is that
it did it for you. It did it for you.
I don't mean that on the sense of like being attracted to the man. I'm saying that this made me attracted to the sport and the way of life.
Yes.
You know, I always joke about, there's a book, and it's actually on the shelf behind me, that kind of drew me into the ultramarathon world. And it was about a guy who was compelled to run Badwater. By the way, this was back in the day where there weren't wait lists to get on Badwater. It was like, if you were crazy enough, there was probably a space for you. Yeah, he went and ran Badwater to process his brother's death. So this is not new news. And this was the first book that I read, full-length book that talked about ultramarathon. So anyway, so I felt as though it was written for me. Like this was an acceptable thing to do with your emotion. The sport was built for you to lay bare the rawness of your emotion. There was a place for it to go. And guess what? There was so much space for it to go, because you could do it forever and no one was going to ask you questions. And it's crazy because, you know, I'm sitting here, and I know you're probably gonna think I'm nuts, but I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about this, because it felt, and I don't know if you have this experience, but like it felt for me like the perfect thing.
Oh yeah.
And I bought into that mythology. And so, so 10 years went by before the bottom fell out for me to understand that I could no longer, like, this was a mirage, and putting all my emotion into this thing. And by the way, it didn't have to be running, but when you put all of your emotional processing into any one thing, you risk the bottom falling out, because as we know, you can only put so much pressure on one point until it breaks, right?
Yeah.
And so, I think it's really interesting to see we're both kind of like coming at it from two different sides, which is, you know, you weren't able to, and I was able to.
Yes. And mine was early, and yours was late, like in our athletic kind of, like I had to go through that, which then shaped the way I approached all of my training afterwards.
Yeah.
And you had to go through it first, and then that's shaped things in a different way for you now.
Right. And I want to point out to everybody at this point that Sarah could not use her sport to process a deep pain and learn to work through it And I'm not trying to make any kind of connection here, but she's still running. Okay. She's healthy.
Tap on wood.
Yes. And being frank, everybody, listen, Auntie Jill here did not make the right choices and spent an extra 10 years of using my body, and I cannot run anymore. Let's just be clear. So I just want to go back to what we talked about, the sort of addictive part of this. And so let's talk about sort of where you see that tendency maybe in yourself, whether it's running or other things. Like, what does that sort of feel like, and how does it sort of show up in running for you?
Oh yeah, definitely. When I was younger, it was a feeling of needing to have a control and perfection in something, right? If you find that you're decent at something, I wouldn't say great, but I was good enough to where I could continue to improve and get better. And so that was really a good ego boost, right? You do something, you're good at it, you keep doing it. The more, obviously a little is good, then a lot must be better. And I got addicted very much to that, the ego side of things, but also the actual feeling that I got from running, whether it was the elusive runner's high or accomplishing a new distance or doing something. It's a boost, right? And, you know, I know that I have addictive problems in my family. Addiction, my brother was one of them. Alcoholism runs in my family. I know I feel like I have got those tendencies. I find something and I want to go all in. And I see that in the past with my athletic, you know, and that's not to say that you're ever out of it. Like, I would be lying if I said it didn't happen now. Like, I have to consciously some days be like, I know you want to run, but your body's telling you not to. But the difference is now versus 20 years ago is that Sarah wouldn't have listened. That Sarah would have kept pushing. This Sarah goes, yeah, I need a rest day. Like, it's beautiful. I want to get outside, but maybe you should just walk. Even though on my schedule that I write for myself right now is like, go run. It's like, no, it's not a good day because of my knee or whatever. So back to your question, which I didn't really answer, was just this, it used to be like this. And I don't know what addiction to anything else feels like because I've never had a chemical dependency on anything. I tried to avoid that because of the family history, but this gnawing need to do something, like this compulsion to do something, and to where, you know, you hear stories of people that will you know, they'll get ready to go to bed at 10 p.m. and, oh, I didn't run today. And so they'll go out and run because they have to run that day. That compulsion. And I used to have more of that. Like, I'd run through pain. I'd run through hunger. It didn't matter the weather. It didn't matter if I was on a vacation. This is embarrassing, but I'm going to admit this. Like, I started to have those tendencies when I wasn't running. This was a couple years after my brother's death, but I transferred it over to weight training. Your girl, while living in Germany the first time, that we took a trip to Santorini, right? So if anybody that's listening isn't familiar, like, Ryanair gives you like a postage size stamp allowance for your baggage, like, and like 10 pounds, like you get to carry nothing. Your girl packed kettlebells.
Oh, mama.
So that she could do kettlebell work.
Oh, mama.
In her cave house in Santorini.
Okay, that is.
You want to unpack that? So, but I mean, that's where it still comes out, right? Like, this was over a decade ago, but those feelings of, I'm going to be on vacation. I'm going to be eating a lot. I can't run. I better bring some things so I can work out.
Yes.
And full transparency, I've been there to where I was packing kettlebells to my Greece vacation. Like, who does that?
Well, people do that. Well, yeah.
But I know now, I can laugh about it now because it's silly, right? Now, like, looking back at myself going, what the hell were you thinking? But at the time, it was this, I have to control that I can still get my workout in. And I realized that about myself, and I was able to go, okay, we're going there again. We can't do this, right? And so thankfully now, it's like, it's funny to me now, but at the time it was very important because I had that addiction. And yeah.
How much of that addiction do you think was related to managing mental health, and how much of it do you think was just sort of an innate sense of addiction?
I think at the time I was pretty mentally happy and secure. I think it was just more of a body image issue, and also just feeling like I need to do this thing, because if I don't do this thing, I really do think it came more into like body confidence and body issues, and worrying that I was, I can't work out. And if I can't work out,
Right.
like that's somehow going to translate into like everything going to hell.
Yeah.
Mentally, I mean, that sounds like conflicting, right? But like mentally, my marriage was in a good place. It'd been a couple of years after my brother died. We were living here in Germany. I was happy. I had a job I loved. Like I was happy, but that side of, I can't just go on a vacation and enjoy it. Because remember, like my husband was like, I'll just pack my running shoes and go for a run. And I'm like, you asshole, sorry. But like, I can't do that, right? Because I can't run. So I was trying to fill that void. I used to tell people, like, there's that saying people talk about, like a God-shaped hole in your heart. I would say I had a running hole in my heart, like, and I was trying to do anything to fill that when I couldn't run, which was part of the process of like therapy and talking to people and working through that, because it was very much well, I can't run, so trying to find a substitute to fill that. And when it was never about the activity, it was what mentally I wasn't able to deal with, because I was filling it with something else other than dealing with it.
I think that's right. I think that's very insightful. And I think that's important, because I think that we need to recognize the fact that we can hold space for being happy in our lives, and yet still needing to compensate for an underlying anxiety that might be pervasive in our lives. And I think this is typically a hard thing for people to understand. I often hear people say, well, I'm not depressed, or I'm not upset, or I love my life. And I have women and men who will contact me and say, but I don't understand why I'm feeling this way, because my life is good. And it's like, of course your life is good. You've managed it well. But also, we can have space in our lives for happiness, and also an underlying level of anxiety that requires a chronic coping mechanism, which we intuitively know is necessary, particularly in the times that we're in right now. Everyone is stressed. Everyone has like a baseline anxiety. Even if you didn't 4 years ago or 5 years ago, you do now. We all do. Yeah. And so we can count our blessings and be aware of the good things in our lives and feel good about our lives in general, but we can still have an underlying anxiety that the management of which can be precarious if our mechanism to deal with that isn't a good one. Or if we do not vary the tools. That's my whole thing of diversifying our tools so that we're not reliant on one thing.
Because like you said, if you only count on one thing to be your tool, it's gonna break. At some point you will be sick, you will be injured, something will happen. You have to have more coping mechanisms than that. And I didn't. It was controlling food and running.
Yeah.
Sometimes simultaneously. So,
Yeah. I think these activities that we do, particularly around, sport or drugs, alcohol, all the addictive things that we know about, sex, gambling, shopping, all these things. The behavior is there to answer a fundamental question. And people have probably heard me say this before, but the fundamental question is, am I okay?
Yeah.
And that's it. And this running or sport or whatever it is, the results of that behavior answer the question for you.
And I would piggyback on that too and say, I know for me, I think it then goes down to, am I okay, right? That's the root, but am I enough?
Yes.
And if I feel that I'm enough, then I'm okay.
That's right.
And so for me, I never felt like I was enough, right? And so I needed to do these things to prove, even if it was to prove to no one else but myself, that I could do this thing and I could do it fairly well. And I could get up every morning and be dedicated, and I could qualify for Boston, and I could do all these things, that I'm enough.
Yeah.
And I think part of that too was being in my 20s, and it was a pretty girl. So I think now being in the 40s is so liberating, part of it, because I've also taken the time to process things, right?
Sure.
But also just like not giving any literal you-know-whats anymore. It's like, no,
yeah. Balance is not something that comes easily. Balance is something we achieve. It takes a long time for us to understand that. I'm still trying to figure it out. But
it's a moving target too.
Ah,
it's never static, right? Balance is always shifting.
No, but I also do want to say that, you know, just because we're a little bit older does not mean that there are not tools that we would suggest for someone who's younger and going through this. So let's talk about some of the places where we would suggest for people to sort of, what are red flags that people might see coming up in their lives that are suggestive of the fact that they may not be managing their mental health particularly well, and that they're spending too much time focused on sport.
A big one for me, which is what I also try to have that conversation with my athletes about, is when people run, even if they're in pain.
Yes.
Like they have a little issue, like to me, that's, we've leapt beyond a lot of steps at that point, but that's a huge red flag to me, is if you have still the compulsion to go run, even if you're experiencing pain, and you shouldn't run, but that whole of, I'll just run through it, it'll be fine.
Right.
You know, that to me is like, you should be paying attention when you find that happening, because you're overriding signs of your body that you need to slow down. Why are you doing that?
Right.
What compulsion, what is mentally driving you to go like, yeah, I know this hurts, but I've got to go run anyways. Right.
So I would add to that, and we can just keep going back and forth. I would say the second place where I would be concerned is when you start to cut off social interactions and replace that with training sessions. And this can be sneaky because it can show up in two ways. It can be planned or unplanned. So if you are the kind of person who, by the way, I'm just going to raise my little hand over here.
I should probably raise mine in advance. I'm going to guess. Yeah, go ahead. We'll see.
My entire family, my entire life knew if it was Easter Sunday or any holiday that would fall on a Sunday, every person in my family knew that Jill was not showing up until maybe 3 o'clock, when whatever bullshit it was that she was doing that morning was done, and she was showered, and then she would come over later.
Yeah.
So that is not super healthy. Also because I have social anxiety and was nervous around my family, and so I was avoiding. And then, so that's planned, right? And that looks like, well, that's just how she is, but we need to ask the question why. And then the second part of that is when it's unplanned. So that's the sort of like, I feel really stressed, I don't want to go to that party, I'm just going to go for a run instead.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Or packing kettlebells on your vacation to Greece.
Right.
So that you're not fully being present in the vacation, but you can still get your workout in.
Interesting. And then you have to ask why you wouldn't want to be fully present in that vacation. Was it slowing down that was going to make you nervous?
Yeah.
So where else would you suggest people take a peek? And what's another red flag?
I like I agree with everything you just said, the avoidance, the planned and unplanned. I feel like any time you get any kind of news in your life that triggers you to your immediate responses, I must go do this activity in order to process it. That should probably be something that makes you take a good hard look at like, what are you processing, instead of, and again, that's not to say that like you can't go out and have a run if, you know, and be present, but if it was not a planned run, if it was not a planned workout, and suddenly something happens and this compulsion of like, I gotta lace up my shoes and get outside. That's usually a red flag that you're using the activity instead of trying to work through the mental aspect of things.
I agree with that one. And I will raise you. When you're feeling particularly anxious, or when you are having like a sort of chunk of time where you know it's going to be kind of nerve-wracking, where you start scrolling through Ultra Sign Up.
Oh, that's a good one.
Ultra Sign Up doom scroll.
Oh,
we have all been there. So
you just trip and you hit the button and you're signed up.
Oh,
it's magical.
Yes. For those of you who may not be ultra runners that are watching this, Ultra Sign Up is a central sort of clearinghouse of race registrations for ultra marathons, kind of all over the world at this point, of varying distances.
Yes.
And ultra marathon has become a business now, to the point where, it used to be that ultra marathoners would find 1 or 2 big races a year that they were really excited about. And now you could just scroll on any given weekend if we're not in pandemic times.
People still do.
It's true. And you could just sign up for kind of anything that's happening this weekend or, you know, next month or next year. And now where anxiety is plaguing you to the point where your kind of life feels a little loosey-goosey, you can now structure yourself around your next 50 miler or your next 100 miler. Because now if you've signed up for a race, you have a place to put that energy. So if you find yourself doing that, like ultramarathon doom scroll, you know, that like looking for some place to put your energy, that might be a point where you might want to say, what energy am I trying to offload? Yeah.
And I would add too, that I see a lot with people. It's interesting when you know, and I'm not saying this is outing anybody, but you know people in real life, and then you see them on social media, and how people that compulsive of, I have to get the run in so I can post it on social media, or they need the kudos, they need the attention, they need the validation. It becomes, this little tool becomes I've got to go outside and get this epic run in, or I've got to do this event so that I can share it and prove to people, essentially, am I enough?
Yes.
Social media, I think, has been really hard, because you see, I've talked to athletes who are like, I feel like I need to sign up for another race. I'm seeing everybody do it on social media. All my friends are signing up for these races. I feel like I need to do this.
The FOMO is real.
Oh, it is. And it's like, but you're just coming off of an injury, or this isn't part of your cycle, or like, pump the brakes a little bit. Like, what is your motivation for doing this?
Yeah.
You know? So
do you want to have the conversation about Strava? You want to go there?
I don't have a Strava account.
Neither do I. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, we are old enough to have started our running careers with no Strava, because
full disclosure, I signed up for it a couple of years ago because they were doing a free Western States entry giveaway.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay. And then I was like, this is ridiculous. And also from a safety perspective, I don't want people knowing where I'm running. Like, just look up my map. Yeah. Anyways. And then it became, people are just crazy with it.
Right.
Yeah. I don't need that kind of negativity in my life. So it was wonderful to like start running before that.
Yes, it really was. And I never had a Strava. I never used Strava, and all of my athletic life was way before Strava was what it is now. And I'm happy about that. But I want to make sure that we connect this back to mental health, because, you know, human beings are very charmed by data.
Oh, yes.
And we become very excited about seeing those numbers kind of add up. So I'm not saying I didn't have a sort of mileage tracker. I did back in the day. It was so analog. It's like painful. It was like a website, you know, it was like you had to, I think it was called Running Ahead. One of my running friends, hi Nate, he actually, he told me about this app, and it's what I used to use. So I'm not saying I didn't see those numbers pile up. I did. It just wasn't public like it is now. And
FKTs and Strava segments, and someone's beat your local route, so you've got to go do it again.
Yes.
Yeah.
And this can be a place where it is very easy for us to, again, it's that whole concept of coping with our mental health by, do I feel good today? Well, I don't know, but my Strava numbers look good. Or I got an FKT on that whatever segment last weekend or whatever. And so this becomes a place for us to get a false sense of our overall health and our overall mood, because we can take a look at these numbers and say, well, I feel good because of this, or this, I must be fine. My Strava looks good, therefore I must be coping.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So these are places where it is, the danger does come up. I also want to be clear, and this might be a little more particular for a certain segment of the population watching this, is that making overly restrictive dietary choices based on a sort of nebulous concept of improved performance. Oh.
I don't know what you're talking about.
What? Sorry, excuse me? Hello? If you find yourself doing this and focusing a lot of your time on researching diets, trying to find what you think might be the perfect combination of macronutrients or caloric intake, under this concept of, again, trying to perfect your performance or achieve better performance, this is another red flag. This could be telling us more about what you're trying to compensate for than whether or not you're approaching it with a healthy mindset.
Agree. Yeah, I would agree with that.
So something to think about there. Can we think of any other red flags? I'm sure there's a million that we're going to forget today, but just in case there's anything else.
I think those are the big ones. I really do. Anything that I think causes you to miss out on opportunities to spend time with people because like planned or unplanned, that not listening to your body and still feeling the compulsion to go do your activity, even if there's pain or you're fatigued, and needing that validation from being able to say you did a workout versus whether you should be actually resting, I think are all red flags to me.
Yeah. Important things to say. So one of the things that you might find out there in the world is that as you start to sort of understand this concept, you might be confused by the pervasive sort of marketing message for particularly ultra endurance sport, where more is always better. There is never a point of diminishing returns. You should always push harder. You should always try to achieve more. This is could not be more wrong in terms of concept or mindset. And I always direct you guys back to the curve relationship between physical activity and health. There is a point where zero physical activity is not good for you. There's a sweet spot at the top where a certain amount of physical activity is going to be good for your body and mind. And then overdoing that is going to incur detriments across your body, your mind, everything. So that's just a concept. It's a basic concept that we understand, right? It's something that we, for whatever reason, have decided in our culture doesn't apply to endurance sports.
Yeah. It's like I tell people, too much sunshine can kill you, right? Super good for you in a lot of different ways, but too much of anything can be dangerous.
Right.
And for some reason though, with a sport that is sky's the limit, we're lauded for pushing ourselves further and further and faster and further. It's really hard for people to start drawing those lines of like, when do I need to call that limit for myself?
Right. And I would argue, taking it one step further, that you are not in control by saying you don't have limits and then just trying to blast through everything. You're actually more in control, and you're a more disciplined athlete if you can understand the concept of restraint.
Yes.
Apply that to your training. And by the way, coach right here will tell you, right?
Yeah.
How do you,
100%.
how does that work with your athletes? Yeah.
Oh, well, just having this communication of like knowing how to safely approach distances in a very intelligent way, listening to the signs of your body when there's fatigue going on or potentially overtraining. We never want to get to that point. So we try to listen to watch the signals, listen to the body, and not get caught up on the should have. I should do this. It's cool to it's awesome to have a list of like, I want to get into this race someday, or I want to do this, to have a goal. But okay, maybe 0 to 100 miler in 3 months isn't the way to do it.
What are you talking about?
You know what I mean? Like, yeah, like you need to be intelligent and also respect your body's limits, because not everybody is able to do, just because you see someone doing it in Trail Runner magazine or on Instagram. I'm not going to be a dream killer. I think everybody has potential, but listen to your body of where you're at.
And mine.
And yes. Yeah. No, you're right. 100, hence the conversation. But, and just be really in tune with your motivations for doing things, and then approach it from an intelligent point of knowing your limits, and then listening to your body and your mind of when you need to adjust things. Because so many people will get the ultra sign up race on the calendar, hell or high water, they're going to complete it.
Right.
Nobody wants to DNF, nobody wants to, defer, but sometimes you have to do that.
Definitely.
Just because a race is on your calendar, if something comes up, you need to listen to the body and the mind.
For sure. I think we covered so much of what I wanted to cover. And I'm really grateful for you being so open with us and telling us about
anytime
your situation.
Open book over here.
Yeah. I think it's really great. And I'm even more, in retrospect, shocked by the contrast between the two of us in terms of, like we said before, that you were not able to run through it, and you actually fared better than this old broad. So I'm happy to hear that. And I really do hope that those of you watching can take a little bit of wisdom from this conversation. And understand that managing your mental health is a lifelong journey.
Yeah.
No one thing is ever going to be the perfect thing. And even if you find the perfect thing, most likely it will work for you for a certain amount of time. And then as you grow and change and learn something new, you might need to, again, add to that arsenal of tools or change your toolbox. You never know.
Absolutely.
And, this is a good part of life. It's part of the journey. It's part of growing and changing. And
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think you learn more about yourself. You know, the more you learn about yourself, it's more empowering, right? Like we have such a difference in our backgrounds and where we came from of like you said, years, had I not been injured, I probably would have ended up in a very similar situation. And I'm not happy that I couldn't run at the time. I was devastated, but now that I went through that and I processed things, it's made me a healthier, more well-rounded person who respects my limits now.
See?
So
good job. Okay.
No, but just try to avoid being injured to make that happen. If I would say that, like, don't make the injury make that happen for you. Like,
right, exactly.
Yeah.
You know, there's nothing wrong with doing things preemptively or just kind of self-monitoring before things get bad. And I think that's the message that we're trying to.
Exactly, because my injury was a direct result at the time of pushing things too far, right?
Right.
My original injury.
Yeah. Exactly. Well, I just, of course, want to thank you again for doing this, for chatting. And of course, like I said to you the first time you came on, it won't be the last time. You'll be on again, hopefully with us.
Maybe we'll be doing one in person someday.
Oh my goodness, yes. To be discussed. Our lips are zipped on that one. Folks, if you want to get in touch with Sarah, remember that she is a wonderful coach and she is someone who understands so much about eating issues, overtraining. She has such a good grasp on all of these topics, as you can tell with this conversation. If you're looking for a running coach and you're looking to not bang up against the wall of stupid.
I like that.
Have a running coach that's going to support you and understand what you're going through. Please contact Sarah. I'm going to put all of her information below. And I really do hope that this conversation was helpful for people.
Yeah, definitely. Reach out if you definitely.
We're here for you.
The aunties are here.
The aunties are here. The aunties of ultra running, for better or worse. Honestly, everyone, we hope that in these times that everyone is getting through. You know how hard it is everywhere you are right now, and our hearts are with all of you. So,
absolutely.
Thanks for watching today, and we'll see you again soon.